Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. Good to be with you on a Wednesday. Appreciate everybody that's tuned in to the Utah Blockcast this season. Last couple weeks, it's been a lot of fun. It's been busier for me. The schedule has certainly ramped up. This is our silly season as we've got football going on, basketball going for both men's and women's, recruiting, getting close to signing day. It's just crazy. It's a crazy time right now. So appreciate everybody that's patient with me in these daily episodes. But I got to be better. Got to be more consistent. So, anyways, on this episode, want to dive into a couple topics. Quarterback situation at Utah. Devin Dampier, Bird Ficklin. Kyle Whittingham talked about his desire, his hope that Utah is able to bring both back in 2026. So we'll dive into that a little bit, have a little conversation. Also talk about something else he said in his press conference, talking about the scoring margin. And he was asked about fourth quarter scoring. And I guess his comments have rubbed people the wrong way. Surprise, surprise. And so we'll run through some numbers there on that. Some context as well. But I want to start first with Utah basketball. Alex Jensen's squad improves to 5-0 after knocking off the Mastodons of Purdue Fort Wayne. 85-77 last night at the Huntsman Center. Some good things, some bad things to take away from that game. I think first and foremost, this team is fun to watch, offensively, I should say. They're doing a lot of really interesting things. Last night, they switched up their offensive attack and really attacked the corners and shot it well from the corners. I think they finished 12 of 29, but for most of that game, they were shooting over 50% from three-point range. Unfortunately, they just had a stretch late in the game where they went scoreless and missed a number of shots, but it was interesting to see the offense from what it's been the previous 4 games, where it's been a lot of Terrence Brown attacking the rim and breaking down defenders and pick and roll type stuff, to where this game, it was still a lot of pick and roll offense, but both Brown and Abby were really keying in on the weak side defender, the corner spot, the opposite corner spot, and created a lot of open looks. And credit to Terrence Brown for being a guy in that spot when Abby was on the floor with him, or Don McHenry was operating in that pick and roll. He had struggled up to this point of the season shooting from behind the arc, and I think he came into the game 1 of 15. He finished the night 5 of 8. From 3-point range. So his best shooting performance, and I think that is huge for him specifically, because obviously, he's been able to get to the rim at will through these first 5 games, thanks to his athleticism and ability to break down his defender. But he's going to face tougher competition, tougher defenders, more athletic, bigger defenders. So he's got to be able to add to his game, add to his repertoire. And I think showcasing that sort of shooting ability is really going to help him out. Obviously, it's a confidence booster for him as well. So you hope that after starting, 1 of 15 through the first 4 games, that sort of breakthrough shooting performance for him, 5 of 8, will help him be a little bit more consistent shooting the rest of the way. Seydou Traore also had a good night from 3-point range. He finished... What did he finish up? 4 of 8 from 3-point range. Again, with a number of those in that corner spot. He also had a couple from the wing as well. So Don McHenry finished the game 7 of 10 and 2 of 4 from 3-point range. 18 points. Terrence Brown led the way with 27. Keanu Dawes went 10 and 10 for another double-double. James Okonkwo finished with 10 rebounds. Only 2 points off a big dunk, but those 10 rebounds were pretty big, and I think 7 of those came on the offensive side of the ball. So he's added some hustle. He's added some juice inside. But the big red flag for this team is the defensive end of the floor, and Utah just struggling to get stops at a really consistent rate. And this is going to be a process for Utah, is not only getting that buy-in and creating that defensive culture and mindset. It's going to take time, and that's the thing to understand. It's not going to be from day one. It's going to take time to understand the rotations, to learn through mistakes. But that is an area that Utah has to make significant improvements. Tomorrow night against Cal Poly, and then getting into the next phase of the schedule, starting with Grand Canyon. But the team has some pieces, and I think we're starting to see a good core sort of come together with Brown, McHenry, Traore, Keanu Dawes, and Jacob Patrick, and others. Utah's going to need this group to develop, and we've seen improvements. We've seen adjustments and the offense evolving through the first couple of games, and I think that's really encouraging to see, but it's all going to depend on the defensive side of the floor for Utah as they get into this next phase of the schedule. So, and one last thing before I move on, I really hope that Utah figures out a way to improve the in-game experience for fans. They've done a lot to try and provide entertainment value for fans during timeouts, but during the action, there is just nothing going on to promote fans getting engaged with the game. Unfortunately, the Huntsman Center just isn't an intimidating place right now. And I think Utah really needs to look at what they're doing inside the Huntsman Center to promote more of an energetic crowd, more of an energetic and loud arena. They need to create this sort of atmosphere. It's going to take time, and Alex Jensen is doing what he can with the players on the floor to generate that as well. But it's on the production, it's on the university, it's on the people, to create that sort of atmosphere. So, that really stuck out to me last night. I know that there's been a lot of talk about how much investment Utah is putting into the basketball program. And last night, that really stuck out to me, was just how it sort of felt like everybody was just watching and spectating, and that's really it. There needs to be more to generate the sort of atmosphere that Utah needs getting into these tougher games and then getting into conference play. And I'm sure that the crowd is going to improve. These aren't the type of games to get, to draw a big crowd. I do think the crowd is going to improve as we see better competition and better games. But the time to start building that sort of atmosphere is now. Like, start it now. Get into the habit of creating these sort of things, right? Make some noise type of flashes on the Jumbotron, the noise meter, the 3-point make, the air horns. Give us some damn air horns. You know what I mean? Like, there's just nothing to promote energy in a raucous environment in the game, during the game. That's where Utah needs to really assess what they're doing. So that's my rant. That stuck out to me last night. I'll get off my rant here and transition to football, but that I needed to say all that. So I'll end it there. I might dive into that a little bit more down the road, but we'll see. But anyways, Utah's 5-0. They've got Cal Poly at the Huntsman Center. Hope people show up to that game against the Mustangs and continue to help Alex Jensen and this basketball program, get back to what it once was. And I think, again, there's some exciting things going on with this program. There's some exciting players that provide a lot of highlight moments. This team is a work in progress, and I think that's the thing to keep in mind above all else, is this is a team where the focus has been all about getting better towards the end of the season. So a long ways to go. This team has a lot of improvement, a lot of strides to make, but there are still things going on right now that I think can entertain crowds and promote that sort of buy-in from the fan base again. So, anyways, enough of that. Let's transition to the quarterback conversation. All right, now with the quarterback conversation, let's go back to Kyle Whittingham's comments, and he was asked about Utah's chances of bringing back both Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin in 2026. So let me get to Whittingham's comments here. I'll pull up the video for you.
We sure hope so, and that's remains to be seen, and that will be addressed. Obviously, they've tweaked the recruiting a little bit now in the dead periods, where December is now completely a dead period, and the portal does not open until January now, and so you have a little more time after the regular season to sort those things out than before. Before, you'd have to start those conversations now with a lot of your players as far as what their plans are and that type of thing. But with what Bird's done this year and what Devin's done for that matter, we're going to have to really step up to hang on to those guys, and that's really an administrative thing, it's not in my court. That's what kind of resources we can come up with to keep the roster together, and it'd be interesting to do the study. My guess is if you took a study of Power 4 football rosters, the $25 million rosters, the 20, and with the average win-loss record, it would just follow suit exactly with the resources available. So yeah, everyone's trying to step up in that regard.
So there you have it. Obviously, his comments, you can read into those a number of different ways. Obviously, by saying we sure hope so, kind of acknowledging that there's a real possibility that Utah is only able to bring back one of these guys next season, and at the same time, admitted that Utah, there are people trying to step up to hang on to these two players, and I think this situation is so unique, right? There's the old adage that if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. But I think Jason Beck has really done a phenomenal job of flipping that on its head and turning these two players into pretty productive contributors, not only just with one or the other on the field, but now the last couple games, we've seen them on together quite a bit, which has been interesting. And it's something that both Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin have embraced. And they talked about it in the post-game press conference after the Baylor game that, they've joked around about it quite a bit, that if and when they got into the end zone, how would they celebrate and do those types of things. And, both of these guys, it's clear that there's a good relationship here between Dev and between Bird. And I think Beck deserves a lot of credit for fostering a good culture there within that room, because things can get pretty competitive. Things can get ugly. And we know that, there can only be, most of the time, there is only one QB starter. And even if you have both on the field at the same time, only one can take the snap. So, it's a naturally competitive position, and both of these guys are competitors. But at the same time, I think they've embraced what this season has meant, what this season has done for them, and they both talk about it quite a bit, that the team success overall overrides any sort of individual success. Both of them acknowledge that. And I thought Bird's response to what he takes the most pride in with what he's contributing, his response was the most important stat overall, wins. And Devin Dampier talked about the team mindset being 1-0, and that everybody is bought into that. And I think that's true. I think you see that on a pretty consistent basis, guys sacrificing for the overall good. And when you have a game like you did against Baylor, where you're just ripping off big runs, that's an exciting time. These guys work hard, and to see that pay off, regardless of who or how is ripping off those big plays, the overall excitement when you see your team have success, I think that's been the biggest thing for Utah this season. It's just been the team camaraderie and the team buy-in into their overall success. So, anyways, with the quarterback situation specifically, obviously we know that quarterbacks are going to be expensive. And for Utah, with what they've done this season with Dampier and Bird, both of those guys will probably have very interested suitors come the offseason. the great thing here is, Whittingham talked about it, that the transfer portal window has moved from December to the month of January. And I think that is going to be an interesting dynamic in how it impacts what happens in the transfer portal. I know that we've already seen, reports of players like Sam Levitt talking about entering the portal and that sort of stuff. But I do think there is going to be a positive benefit for programs like Utah that have built a strong culture to have that month in December where you can have these sort of exit meetings. You can talk about the future with players. You can talk through concerns. You can talk through desires and goals with these players. I think that's going to have a positive impact for programs in their ability to retain players. I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is, with the transfer portal window opening in the month of December, fresh off of the season, that there can be some emotional decisions, right? Players on teams that have had a losing record, players that have been frustrated with their roles. It can lead to emotional decisions to enter the portal. So I think having this extra month of time to have those conversations with players, to walk through everything that they may be thinking and feeling, I think is going to have a positive impact on what happens in the transfer portal. It's not going to eliminate everything. Obviously, there's still going to be, the surprises and that sort of stuff. But I think the volume in that sense, I think, is going to be limited. Now, another thing that I think is going to benefit programs overall is, the rev share stuff. Programs are aware of what other programs have and what they're going to be offering. They're aware of what players are receiving. So I think there's going to be a better ability for programs to hang on to key players, starters, and I think that's going to benefit programs. But with this quarterback situation specifically, with what Dampier has proven to be, and with what Bird Ficklin has sort of shown us in these moments of brilliance, both of these guys have the potential to be really hot commodities this season, in this transfer portal window coming up in January. And so how does Utah hang on to these two? That's going to be tough. They're going to have to step up financially to retain both of them. And, with that's obviously going to be the big key to all of this. I think there is a good culture in place, and there's a good community around both Bird and Dev in terms of decision making, and having people around them that will help them make good decisions. And I think Utah is doing their best to ensure that both know that they are wanted at Utah. I know that there's going to be an increased level of motivation and desire from people around the program to potentially offer or create NIL opportunities for Utah players this season compared to last year. Obviously, when you have a season like Utah has had, popularity grows and eyeballs are on these players, and there's a lot of interest in who these guys are. And I think there's a lot of unique opportunities that can be created because of Utah's success this season. So obviously, it's going to take a lot for Utah to hang on to these two players. And I think, obviously the biggest reason you want to bring both of them back is it gives Utah stability at the game's most important position. And having Dev back, having Bird back, not only solidifies your immediate future, but also your future, your down the road future with Bird. And assuming that they remain bought in, because obviously we know that the quarterback situation is unique. It is competitive, like I talked about a little bit ago. But I think with stability and the opportunity to have another year with some of these players around the quarterback, right? Like a JJ Buchanan, like a Larry Simmons, like a Wayshawn Parker in the offensive line, having the quarterbacks in place and having those reps with those players to develop and to just gain experience together. We've seen what that's meant for Dampier and Ryan Davis. The chemistry that they have, you can only get that with the amount of reps that they've had together. And I think having that sort of continuity is the biggest reason why you want to bring both back. And that's more speaking to Dampier, but with Bird, you want to bring him back because he's also getting some of those reps. He's also, generating chemistry with some of the other guys in the skilled position rooms. So having that, when eventually, you might be able to pass the baton to Bird officially, I think that is obviously the biggest motivating factor into why Utah wants to bring both back. Now, with that said, obviously we know that the NIL factor in this is going to be the ultimate deciding factor. And, I think with Dev and Bird and their dual threat ability, I think it's not that you're paying a starting quarterback and a backup to stand on the sideline and hold the clipboard. What we've seen this season is that both are contributing and both are doing it in ways that, you can get return on investment, even if Bird isn't the starter, or he's not, playing a true quarterback role. Looking at his numbers this season, let's take a look here. Bird Ficklin has ran 47 times, 442 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That's a pretty solid return on investment. He's also thrown for a handful of touchdowns, and obviously 21 of 34 on the season, 301 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Having that as your backup quarterback to a player like Dev, that's pretty impactful. But you're still able to get value in return for what your investment might be, even beyond just what it means as insurance behind Devin Dampier. So I think that's an interesting factor in this conversation, is that you are able to get return on investment beyond just the value of having a starting quarterback and a good backup behind him. You're going to be able to use Bird and Dev simultaneously, together, all of those types of things to really help you get that value back. Now, with that, I think, there's talk of, if you have to decide one way or the other, which way do you go? And that's a tough decision, right? I think for Bird, obviously, with what he's shown us in these moments of brilliance, it's really exciting. I think it's fair to say that, you can look at Bird and what he's done, and you can kind of come away with the idea that he has the higher ceiling. He's a little bit taller. He's got a little bit of a better arm. Kyle Whittingham talked about it. The ball it flies off of his hand. And, with Dev, obviously he's a veteran. He's now got 2 seasons under Coach Beck. He's has a tremendous personality, and he's a tremendous leader. And those are qualities that we don't know about Bird just yet. So if you have to pick one or the other, right, what do you do? And I think that is going to be a tough conversation if it gets to that point where you can't necessarily afford to bring both back. You look in the NFL, the most valuable commodity in the NFL is a good quarterback on a rookie contract. And comparing that to this current situation, right? Obviously with Dev and where he's at as a quarterback going into his senior year next year, he's already hit 7 figures in terms of his NIL and what he's getting from Utah this season. He's certainly going to be interested in getting a bigger number, because you don't know about his prospects as an NFL quarterback and his potential to earn more money as a quarterback after his collegiate career is over. So, for Dev, you understand his desire to cash in on what he's doing with Utah so far. And then with Bird, with what he's done so far, you get really excited, and he's certainly increased his value, but it's still not going to be to the level that Dev is at. So again, that's where I make this comparison of the most valuable commodity in the NFL is a good quarterback on a rookie contract. That's sort of where you're at with Bird. And So this is going to be kind of the interesting debate is, the value, the return on investment. And I think just one cautionary tale in this whole conversation is actually kind of perfect given who the opponent is this weekend. Kansas State, you go back a couple years ago, or not a couple years ago, but not this past offseason, but the offseason before that. They had a similar situation there in Manhattan with Will Howard as the quarterback. He was sort of the veteran. He did a lot of good things, but just seemed to lack that last elite level to lead a team to a Big 12 title. He just made a lot of. And then, you've got Avery Johnson, who at the time was a true freshman, had a lot of moments of brilliance, a lot of big flashes. The hype that offseason around Avery Johnson was remarkable, especially given some of the numbers that we were looking at. I think he had something like 470 passing yards or something like that, made a number of plays in the Pop-Tart Bowl, and the hype was deafening. It was deafening. And I think that's a cautionary tale, because now we've seen Avery Johnson, going back to last year, his first year as the starter replacing Will Howard. It wasn't pretty. He struggled quite a bit. And I think that serves as a good cautionary tale to, appreciate what you have in Dev, that it isn't always going to lead to greater things just because you have a young player like Bird Ficklin, who has been dynamic and generated a lot of big plays. But I just think there's still a lot of unknown with Bird, specifically as a passer. We saw him in the Colorado game start slow and then finally settle into his performance that he had as a passer. But again, there's just a lot for him to learn now with an off season and a season of experience under his belt, and he has gained a lot of valuable experience this season. You have to wonder if that's going to be enough to build on going into 2026 if you have to choose one or the other. So, this is an interesting conversation. And again, there is motivation for Utah to bring both back. And I think, just based on their friendship and sort of reading between the lines with things, I think both would embrace the opportunity to come back. But, I think this is going to be an interesting situation to follow as we get into the offseason. Because again, once you add in that real factor of money and those conversations and what that's going to be, because obviously Utah would love to use their resources elsewhere if they can afford to, and address some other positions. So, that's going to be, again, the conversation as we get into the offseason. But I think it's really important to appreciate what you have right now with Dev and Bird and what they're doing together this season. And I think it's really special. It's really unique. And again, is a credit to Coach Beck and what he's been able to do to maximize the ability of these two players, given sort of the circumstances we're in with the two of them. Obviously, with Dev being limited in terms of his health, and then Bird being a freshman, I think he struck a good balance between the two. So, I think obviously that's a lot of words, a lot of things to consider without any real clear direction as to which way Utah should go. And I think that's just where we're at with this whole thing. But again, there is motivation to bring both back, and I think there will be opportunities for Utah beyond rev share with NIL and that sort of stuff that could lead to good things for Utah on that in that conversation. So we'll see. But that's what I wanted to hit on was that big topic this week, and that's going to be a thing that will continue over the next couple of weeks and into December is that conversation. So should be interesting. All right, and then last thing from me here on this episode, I want to talk through I guess a heated topic. Is Utah scoring in the fourth quarter? Are they not running up the score? Are they running up the score? I think if you're a Utah fan, you understand the context of what Utah has done in the fourth quarter in these games. But for people outside the program that aren't paying close attention and still popping off about Utah running up the score, let's run through some things. All right. So Utah on the season now, averaging 41 points per game. It's a lot of points. You're scoring points at a really high rate, a really high clip, and that's fun. That's fun football. You score 41 points in a game, you're having a good time. And with that, I think the conversation is centered around the last three games for Utah with the way that they've been able to dominate and put up a big margin of victory. What's been interesting is you look at these first quarter numbers, and I think I'm on the right page here. You look at the numbers there. So this is the average points per game in the first quarter, according to teamrankings.com. You look at Utah over the last three games, number 2 in the country behind number 1 Tennessee, 15 points scored in the first quarter over the last three games. So 15 points. So of your 41, you're scoring 15 in the first quarter. All right, let's now go to quarter number 2. All right, over the last three games, you've got New Mexico scoring 17.7 points in the second quarter. That's a big number. Utah coming in at number 4 in the country behind New Mexico, Louisiana, Ohio State at 16.7 points in the second quarter. So that means of your 41 points per game, you're scoring 31 in the first half. You're scoring 3/4 of your total in the first half. Skip Bayless is losing his mind over that. But we'll continue. Let's now take a look at let me pull it up here. At the third quarter, this is where Utah takes a bit of a dip. Getting into the third quarter here. All right, over the last three games. Let me pull it up here. Texas A&M, obviously number 1 with the third quarter that they just had against South Carolina. Are you kidding me? They scored, 28 points in that quarter alone? Unreal. Or 21 points, excuse me. Anyways, so number 1, Texas A&M. Number 2, Tennessee. Number 3, Indiana. Let's keep scrolling down the list here. Keep scrolling. Creeps. Oh, there's Utah. 8 points in the third quarter. Not a big number. I don't know what. Oh, they're ranked. It says right there. Number 28 in the country. 8 points in the third quarter. All right. Not bad. Not bad. Certainly easing up a little bit. Let's get into that fourth quarter. What's that number going to be? All right. Fourth quarter here. Over the last three games, Utah is 11.3 points per game over the last three games. Quite a bit. You look at the fourth quarter overall this season, Utah number 4 in the country at 11 points per game. But let's take a look here. That's Baylor at number 2 with 11.6 points per game scored in the fourth quarter. So, considering the threat that we just watched with Baylor and Sawyer Robertson, they're capable of scoring in quick manner, a very quick manner with that passing attack. So, Utah scored 21. Right, it was 20 points in that final quarter. They had the extra point blocked, but let's keep in mind here. Of those 3 touchdowns scored, 2 came with the second unit offensive line. Alex Harrison, Zaraway Williams, Reese. I'm gonna blank on his name. Oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm gonna look it up here. Reese Parmenter as your left guard helped Utah punch it in for 2 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter. Has anybody seen the Reese Parmenter recruiting profile? I haven't, and it's my job to know that stuff. No offense to Reese Parmenter. Obviously, he helped Utah punch it in twice, doing a heck of a job there at left guard, earned a 71.4 PFF grade. Shout out to Reese Parmenter. But if you're Baylor and you're allowing Utah to score 2 touchdowns offensive line, what's going on down there, Dave? What are we doing down there, Dave? You go back to the Cincinnati game. Bird Ficklin gets into the end zone against Cincinnati in that fourth quarter. What was the offensive line looking like? Or was that Nate Johnson? I can't remember. One of the two. Second unit offensive line. And this is sort of the issue. This has been the thing is Utah sends in the backups. They send in the running back to take the Wildcat snaps. They send in the second unit offensive line. So it's not like they've got the starters out trying to run up the score. They're sending in their backups, and opponents just aren't stopping Utah. So this isn't a Utah problem. They're just out there executing, doing their job. Second string guys trying to get some snaps, trying to get some good tape out there. They're trying to help themselves too. That's all it is. It's on you to stop Utah. Can't stop the second unit offensive line. Can't stop the second unit, third unit quarterback. Isaac Wilson was out there against Cincinnati taking snaps. Third string quarterback this year. You know? So, anyways, I don't think it's a big deal. Utah, when you understand the context, just a lot of players playing late in that fourth quarter. A lot of second stringers, third stringers, getting a lot of snaps. So, I don't think it's a big deal. People want to cry about it, let them cry about it. Not a big deal. It's on them to stop it. But anyways, all right, that's enough for me. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. So we typically do our live stream episode on Thursday nights, but Thursday night I have a Utah basketball game that I will be at. So I will be unable to do the live stream Thursday night. So what we're going to do is we're probably going to do that Friday night. We'll do the live stream Friday night. We'll do the space Friday night as well. That's sort of what we're thinking. So if you have feedback on that, if you would prefer it some other time, you can voice that opinion. But I think we're planning on Friday. So we'll do that. Also got a couple things working on an interview with the K-State Insider later tonight. So I'll have that out tomorrow as well. But appreciate everybody for tuning in and supporting the Utah Blockcast. I think should be an interesting week, diving more into Kansas State, what they're going to be about, what sort of challenge they present Utah this weekend. We'll dive into that a lot over these next couple of days. But again, appreciate everybody. For myself, I'm Steve Bartle. This is the Utah Blockcast. Signing off.